Hey everyone, Flex here. And yes, you read the title correctly. I have recently returned to Flood Escape 2. Anyways, today I wanted to talk about a few things here. I wanted to talk about how I think Flood Escape 2 is doing as of the present in 2023, and I wanted to talk about how I feel about FE2 now that I've once again returned to it after a long break. Before we begin, I know I'm not the most active in the community, so I apologize in advance if I say something that's inaccurate. However, I'm pretty sure I have enough experience so that I can explain and clarify what's been going on and what is going on with FE2. Okay, now let's get into the video. Now to start off, before we can talk about the present, we need to go back in the past and discuss a little FE2 history. Flood Escape 2 is a Roblox game made by Crazy Blocks, released in September 2017. This game is meant to be the sequel to the original Flood Escape, which is a game where you escape floods from facilities by using teamwork to press buttons and do parkour to climb up and escape to the survival spots. There are 3 lifts, each with its own difficulty from easy to hard, 3 facilities to escape from along with a final code you have to crack, and you die if the flood water catches you. Flood Escape 2 got popular pretty quickly after a success of Flood Escape 1. It featured a lot of new ideas. The 3 lifts were reduced to 1. There were different types of floods, 2 of which you can swim in. A new difficulty system was created. The graphics were improved, the themes were expanded, and it also featured a new insane difficulty. Back in the prime days of FE2, which I would say was around 2018 to 2019, Flood Escape 2 had a lot of coverage from YouTube content creators. Darkside Facility was infamous as the hardest map in the game. FE2 Map Test was blowing up with a bunch of new, fun, and challenging community maps, and the game was getting up to several thousands playing at it at a time, rooting itself as one of the biggest games on the platform. It was without a doubt a great time. Beating Darkside Facility was still a major accomplishment. The old difficulty system was still based on the percentage of people who survived the maps. New shortcuts were being discovered and were satisfying to pull off. Block 2 Insane still existed, etc. Around mid-2019 was the last time FE2 was in prime form, when Blue Moon, the first in-game crazy map, was added. This was one of FE2's highest points. Thousands of players were all playing the game to try and beat Blue Moon, if not just playing for fun or trying out community maps. But over the course of the last 3 or so years, as we all know, things began to change. First of all, the game stopped adding new maps at all for basically over a year. This resulted in some people leaving the FE2 community as the game was lacking fresh content and they were no longer interested in playing it. Also released to a lack of updates, there were other games, mostly Tower of Hell and JTO, that were simultaneously getting popular at the time. So while FE2 stagnated and began to slowly decline, this also came with a huge movement of content creators who moved to Tower of Hell or JTO, which meant less coverage on FE2, which resulted in FE2 declining further, which also caused a mass number of people to move to Tower of Hell and JTO, a large number of which quit FE2 along the way. And during that time, Crazy Blocks also released some controversial updates that received significant community backlash, both as a result of the community being pretty large despite its decline and demanding. One of the most notable controversies being the Shadow Map update, which I will not be discussing in the video, but it ultimately resulted in Enzo and Crazy Blocks to part ways, as Enzo would move on to develop Trio.os, which is the equivalent of a separate modernized FE2. And this pretty much also split the community into 2. The game went from thousands of players to only hundreds, a catastrophic decline from its earliest heights as interest in the game almost completely died down. But that sets up a question: has FE2 really gotten worse? From a community standpoint, there are still many community controversies such as the community highlight system, and the community is still involved in several dramas which again do not need to be discussed in this video. And yes, there are still a few bad updates that occur that would have everyone complaining about it. But if you simply play the game, honestly, the game is still fun as hell. Even after all this time, even if the game has gotten a little old. I will say that the speedrun and flood concept still has not lost its excitement factor, especially with maps nowadays upping the standards and skill level needed to escape such maps. And while there are some jokes that Crazy Blocks produces terrible updates and that's why the game has died down, some of which were made by me, there are far more good updates than bad ones. Another thing that people need to realize is that the reason the game declined is the exact same reason why not just every game, but every trend declines. FE2 simply peaked, could not sustain its general community, and lost the attention it received to other games. In fact, simply from my experiences, 90% of the active JTOL players I talk to have played FE2 at some point in the past. But just because a game got old relative to other games does not mean it's gotten worse. For example, no one would really think that 2018 FE2 is better than 2023 FE2 because there's so many new maps and features nowadays that enhance the experience and possibilities in the game that simply did not exist in 2018. In fact, I would argue that the game's been the best it's ever been in terms of quality and enjoyment after the new community highlights update, since now the game is refreshed at a consistent basis, allowing for fresh and interesting content every week and month. Speaking of those maps and features, now that I've been playing the game again, now it's time for some of my own general thoughts on what I feel about them. Note that there are some features I've played in the past that I now have a changed opinion of. Active Volcanic Mines is officially the hardest and most intense map in the game, and I seriously cannot imagine any map that could be harder than this that could be added. And no, Decaying Cell, I'm not counting your 50,000 buffs and shortcut patches. You are a Walmart version of AVM. Oh yeah, AVM also probably has the most satisfying section of all time now. And as for the events, I'll save those for another video. Anyways, if you have not played FE2 or it has been a long time since you've played FE2, I urge you to play it. It's one of the best games I have and will ever play on Roblox, even when I'm not into Roblox. It's just such a fun game to play and escape floods and have a good time on, and I will cherish the time that I had spent on it. If you watched this entire video, thank you so much for listening. Subscribe, like, leave a comment, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.